had a conversation about Donald Trump vowing a 35% tax on products sold inside the United States by any business that fired American workers and built a new factory or plant in another country. This is Trump's actual tweet. Quote, "There will be a tax on our soon-to-be secure border of 35% for these companies wanting to sell their products, cars, AC units, etc. back across the border. Companies should be forewarned before making a very expensive mistake." Now, this has got Republicans, they've got their, undies in a wad. Democrats are upset about, the entire institutional. I am under no illusions that the Republican Party is going to bend to Donald Trump's will. But I have been preaching on this program for 14 years, and I've been writing for probably the better part of 30 years, that when we had an industrial trade policy in the United States that was put into place by Alexander Hamilton in 1793, actually proposed in 1791 by Hamilton and put into place by George Washington in 1793, and it built this country. And it was a this 35% tax that Trump is talking about. This is called a tariff. 100%. Tariffs were so successful here that 100% of the salary of the president, of the salaries of all of the members of Congress, of all of the money that it took to build Washington, D.C., to build all of these federal buildings, to build the Capitol, to build the White House, every penny of federal government revenue from the founding of this country until the Civil War, 70 years, every penny of it came from tariffs. And what did those tariffs do? Well, when imported goods came into the United States, first of all, there was a tax, and it averaged around 35%. And that tax funded the government. But it also made foreign manufactured goods more expensive, and so it caused Americans still wanted to buy things. They still wanted to buy clothing. They still wanted to buy, lamps and tables and chairs and hammers and nails and tools and screwdrivers and I'm trying to put myself in the headset of 1805. I mean, we weren't yet to cars, horses and buggies. They still wanted to buy all that stuff. But instead of buying it from overseas or even nearby, Canada and Mexico, they bought it from American manufacturers because we had tariffs. Now, after the Civil War, you'll remember Abraham Lincoln instituted the first income tax. It didn't last very long, but he put it into place. And the federal government started charging other taxes and fees, particularly on business activity. And so from the Civil War until World War I, 2/3 of the cost of the federal government, and our government was not inconsequential in 1916, 2/3 of the cost of the federal government was paid for by tariffs. So as much as it just makes my head ache to say this, and then 1/3 from World War I until the end of World War II, about 1/3 of American federal government was paid for with tariffs. And then our tariffs started trailing off. In the 50s and 60s, they started declining. And, by the 80s, they were down into the 5 or 10% range. Now our average import tariff into the United States is around 1.2%, I think. Or maybe it's 2.1%, but it's in that neighborhood. It's the neighborhood of 1 or 2%. So it's relatively inconsequential now. Although there are still some items that we have high tariffs on, and there's still items that we have no tariffs on at all. There's still over 22,000 items listed over at the Department of Commerce's tariff website. So as I've been saying all along, when we had an industrial policy in the United States that said that we are going to put the interests of America and the American working class first, and the interests of companies that want to operate in multiple countries, what we've referred to today as transnational corporations, second, and the interests of foreign governments and foreign companies, wholly foreign companies, third, when that was our priority, as it was right up until, Nixon opened us up to China. And then, Reagan took that the next step, and then, NAFTA, and, the Republicans pushed, George Herbert Walker Bush negotiated NAFTA. And off to the races, right? This was the logical consequence of Reaganism. And up until that point, we had never had a trade deficit. We've had nothing but a trade deficit since then. To the point that we're sending overseas $600 billion a year, and that money has to be, has to come back to the United States somehow, because dollars. And so much of it is going to China. Now, let me tie this into something totally, this may seem completely disparate. All over the news right now is this warehouse in Oakland that had been illegally turned into a living space and a dance space. Now, the guy who owned it, I have a feeling he's going to be in deep doo-doo. And the city of Oakland had initiated a process of trying to get in and inspect it and kick out people living. They were stealing electricity from their neighbors, and it was a vacant building. It was supposed to be a vacant building, but there were all these people living there, and a lot of them are dead now. What does this have to do with our industrial trade policy? Here it is. Right now, there is an explosion in the cost of real estate, whether you're buying or renting, on the West Coast of the United States. A real consequential chunk of why the real estate market is exploding on the West Coast, from Vancouver, Washington, all the way down to San Diego, or from Seattle all the way down to San Diego. One of the main reasons for that is that Chinese billionaires are buying American real estate as a way to get their money out of China. You'll recall last week, on Wednesday and Thursday, as I recall, of last week, there were major stories about this in the Financial Times, how the Chinese government is cracking down on mergers and acquisitions to try to stop Chinese businesses or Chinese billionaires from buying American companies as a way of getting their money out of China. Because their foreign reserves are starting to go down, and because they're, it's starting to affect the value of the yuan, the renminbi. They're freaked out. And the Chinese billionaires are freaked out because they know that, this can't last forever. It's a friggin' bubble that's going on in China. And when that bubble bursts, by the way, it's going to take us down too. And so all these people are buying this property on the West Coast, which is driving up property prices to the point that average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the Oakland Bay Area is like $2,400 a month. 2 bedrooms is over $3,000 a month, which is, by the way, what it is here in D.C. But here in D.C., this is this little tiny bubble that's filled with, hundreds of thousands of lobbyists who are making millions of dollars a year. On the West Coast, it's because we don't have an industrial policy, so literally tens of trillions of dollars of what used to be American wealth is now in the hands of the Chinese. They have built a 21st century infrastructure. They have maglev trains. We still have Amtrak, just chugging along. They got 300-mile-an-hour trains going the distance of Chicago to New York. They built it in 5 years. They've got the world's, it's just amazing. Rural airports. Put to shame anything in the United States. And they're trying to get their money over here because of our industrial policy. And that is then driving up the rents in the Bay Area, and driving up the rents in the Bay Area is causing people of low income to seek places to live like this warehouse. Now, I realize it seems sort of circuitous, but really it is all interconnected. We actually do need an industrial trade policy for the United States. We need it badly. I'm just telling you, no matter what Donald Trump says, you're not going to get it out of the Republican Party. And you're not going to get it out of some people in the Democratic Party, although I think, increasingly the Democratic Party is looking at this kind of thing. We'll see where this goes.